Welcome to True Echo, where real stories echo louder than fiction. Today's tale begins with an insult, a showroom full of silence, and one black man in worn-out clothes who walked into a luxury dealership, and quietly changed everything. You won't believe who he really is, or what happened just one day later. So sit back, listen closely, and ask yourself, what would you have done? It was a crisp Thursday afternoon in early spring, and the sun danced off the polished hoods of a dozen European supercars lined up like trophies outside Gleaming Motors, an elite dealership in one of the richest zip codes in the state. Glass walls stretched 3 stories high, showing off curated elegance. Inside, the smell of espresso, new leather, and generational wealth lingered like perfume. The customers matched the luxury, white, stylish, and familiar with 6-figure price tags. Conversations about horsepower and custom upholstery floated beneath soft jazz. No one noticed the sputtering noise outside, at least, not right away. The sound, like a smoker's cough from a dying engine, grew louder. A battered blue scooter rolled to the curb, backfiring once before its rider killed the engine and swung a stiff leg off the seat. He was tall, black, in his early 60s. His brown coat was weathered and frayed, jeans stiff from years of wear. His helmet, sun-bleached and scuffed, hung from his arm like a forgotten relic. But his posture, calm, upright, deliberate, carried weight. His name was Harlan Whitmore, though not a soul in that showroom knew or cared. He stepped inside, and the room changed. Not in temperature, but in tone. Eyes darted. Whispers flickered. A receptionist clutched her tablet tighter. A man in a Rolex-covered wrist leaned toward his wife and said something that made her smirk behind oversized sunglasses. Harlan paused in front of a crimson McLaren, its sculpted body like a piece of moving art. He examined it without touching, then turned and walked up to the front desk labeled inquiries. The salesman there, white, late 30s, tailored navy suit, manicured beard, looked up from his phone and barely disguised his distaste. Yes, he asked, the word dragged out with impatience. Harlan smiled politely. I was wondering about the specs on that McLaren, he said. Also, what's your most expensive car today? The salesman blinked. Then his mouth twisted into a smirk. That McLaren? 400 grand, sir. You sure you're in the right place? He chuckled and waved dismissively toward the window. There's a used dealership down the block. 2 other salesmen laughed audibly behind him. No one offered to help. No one asked Harlan his name. They saw the boots, the scooter, the coat, and saw nothing else. Harlan didn't flinch. I see, he said quietly. That's when it happened. The thud of a door. A man stormed out of the glass office on the far end, red-faced, blonde hair slicked back, mid-40s. His name tag read Travis Caldwell, regional manager. He walked like he owned the building. And to most people in there, he probably did. What's going on out here? Travis demanded. The sales rep, eager to pass blame, gestured lazily. Just redirecting this gentleman, sir. Asked to see our top cars. Travis's gaze swept over Harlan like one might inspect gum on a shoe. Redirected him. You let him in here in the first place. And just like that, the air shifted again, from laughter to a silent anticipation of cruelty. Sir, Travis said, each syllable laced with disdain. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This isn't a museum. These vehicles are not for everyone. I asked a question. That's all, Harlan replied, voice level. You've been answered, Travis snapped. Mitch, escort this man out. The security guard, a white man named Mitch, approached slowly. Unlike the others, his eyes weren't cruel. Just conflicted. You don't need to touch me, Harlan said. I know my way. He turned calmly, pausing for a moment beside the McLaren. He looked at it again, but no longer like a car. Now, it was a symbol. Then, without another word, he walked toward the door. Next time, Travis called after him, try window shopping somewhere that sells what you're wearing. The silence after that was colder than any insult. Outside, Harlan adjusted his helmet, mounted his old scooter, and drove off without ever looking back. But someone inside did look. Mitch. And he would remember that moment, not just for what happened, but for what didn't. No one stood up. No one said stop. And somehow, that felt worse than the insult. The next morning, the sun rose over gleaming motors just like always, casting sharp beams across spotless windows and spotless lives. But inside, unease buzzed quietly beneath the showroom's routine polish. By 9:14 a.m., every staff tablet lit up at once, mandatory staff meeting. 9:30 a.m. Investor evaluation. No exceptions. No one had heard about an investor visit. No prep. No notice. And that alone put everyone on edge. Travis Caldwell paced the floor in his charcoal gray suit, straightening his tie with unnecessary force. This is probably one of those surprise evaluations, he told the team. Big investor wants to walk through and make sure we're performing. He wasn't wrong. But he wasn't even close to ready for what was coming. By 9:28, the entire staff was assembled in the central lounge, salesmen, admins, receptionists, service crew, and Mitch, leaning against the side wall, silent but attentive. The lights dimmed slightly as the sleek double-glass doors at the entrance opened. A man stepped in. Tall. Black. Clean-shaven. Dressed in a midnight blue suit with hand-stitched lapels. His shoes shined like obsidian mirrors, his silvered hair brushed back with precision. The sunlight caught on his wedding ring, thick, heavy, diamond set. He moved with calm power, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. For a moment, no one recognized him. Then Travis's mouth dropped open. "You've got to be kidding," he muttered under his breath. The man walked slowly to the front of the lounge, unhurried, comfortable. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low but filled the space. "Good morning. My name is Harlan Whitmore. I'm here representing Whitmore Kingston Holdings." The name hit like a lightning bolt. Phones buzzed in pockets. Jaws slackened. Whitmore Kingston, one of the largest investment firms in the country. Known for acquiring companies, flipping failing empires, and quietly owning portions of major corporations from shipping to luxury retail. And, most importantly, for this room, 22% of Gleaming Motors' national shares. Travis stepped forward, words scrambling to catch up. "Mr. Whitmore, we weren't, if I'd known, I would have." "Exactly," Harlan said, turning to face him. The calm in his voice cut deeper than anger. "If you had known who I was, everything about yesterday would have been different." The tone, the posture, even the fake smiles. "But that's not what I came to see. I didn't come to be flattered." He turned toward a silent assistant standing near the monitor. She tapped a remote. The wall screen flared to life. And there it was. Surveillance footage. Crisp. Unedited. Time-stamped. Clear. Harlan, just yesterday, walking in with his old coat and scooter helmet. The receptionist glancing away. The smirking salesman. Travis's angry stride into the frame. His pointed finger. The command to leave. And no one. Not one person. Stepping in to say, "This isn't right." The room went still. Travis's face turned red. The receptionist stared at the floor. One of the salesmen who had laughed looked like he was about to be sick. "I built my stake in this company because I believed in what it claimed to stand for," Harlan said. "Excellence. Integrity. Service." He let the words hang. "What I saw in that room wasn't service. It was assumption. It was arrogance. It was a theater of elitism. You didn't ask who I was. You decided who I wasn't." Someone shifted awkwardly in their seat. Mitch didn't move. "I've contacted the board," Harlan said, "and effective immediately, all capital disbursements to this region are frozen. That includes all expansion plans and dealership bonuses. A full internal audit is already underway." Gasps. Actual gasps. One of the junior team members cursed under his breath. Travis looked ready to collapse, but Harlan wasn't finished. "There was one person," he continued, "who didn't join in. Who didn't laugh. Who didn't lay hands on me." He looked to Mitch. "That man did his job, quietly, respectfully, while everyone else failed the basic test of decency." Mitch blinked, stunned. He hadn't expected to be mentioned. He'd barely done anything. But maybe that was the point. Sometimes, not doing the wrong thing is the greatest courage. "I remember men like that," Harlan said. "And I reward men like that." He turned back to the rest of the room. "You don't sell cars here," he said. "You sell attitude. And whether you realize it or not, that's what people pay for, or walk away from." And with that, he nodded once to his assistant, who powered down the screen, and walked out. No more words. No dramatic mic drop. Just silence, heavy and earned. For several seconds after Harlan Whitmore stepped through the glass doors, no one in the room moved. It was as if the air had thickened into molasses, making motion impossible. The surveillance footage still flickered on the screen, frozen at the moment Harlan looked back at the McLaren, his face unreadable, calm, quietly damning. Travis Caldwell stood in the middle of it all, his presence suddenly diminished. The same man who strutted through the showroom just yesterday like he owned it now seemed small, cornered by the echo of his own actions. "Okay," he finally said, voice shaky. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We don't know what corporate is going to decide yet." From the back of the room, someone muttered, "Sounds like Mr. Whitmore already did." Travis turned sharply, but he couldn't identify who had spoken. That unsettled him more than the whisper itself. The control he once had, the command that used to silence rooms with a look, was crumbling like drywall under pressure. The assistant who had accompanied Harlan remained a moment longer. She didn't speak. She simply walked over to the HR manager and handed them a sealed envelope. Then she nodded once and exited the room with quiet confidence. Inside the envelope was a formal letter. It demanded a full audit of customer treatment, hiring practices, and internal complaints over the last 18 months. The document was co-signed not only by Whitmore Kingston Holdings, but two other minority investors who had joined Harlan's call that same morning. Travis scanned the page in disbelief, but every line felt like a sentence. By noon, the phone at corporate headquarters was ringing non-stop. By 3 p.m., two executives from regional leadership had arrived. They didn't smile. They didn't ask for a tour. They asked for names. Every employee who appeared in the surveillance footage. Every complaint filed that involved discrimination or disrespect. Every incident that had been handled internally, which usually meant quietly ignored. The receptionist who had avoided Harlan's gaze was let go by end of week. The two junior salesmen who laughed behind his back were terminated the following Monday. And Travis Caldwell? He was placed on immediate administrative leave pending review. His desk was cleared within hours. There was no farewell lunch, no farewell email. Just a company-issued cardboard box and a long, quiet walk out the back in trance. But amid the unraveling, one name kept coming up in a different light, Mitch. The security guard who hadn't joined in. Who hadn't mocked, blocked, or escalated. Who had simply treated Harlan like a human being. Mitch had no idea what he had done that was so special. But when the regional director called him into the office, he was greeted with something rare in that building, sincerity. "You didn't know who he was, did you?" the director asked. "No, sir," Mitch said. "I just knew he didn't deserve to be spoken to like that." The director nodded slowly. "We need more people like that." And just like that, Mitch was promoted. Operations coordinator. Effective immediately. It didn't come with a flashy bonus or a corner office. But it came with something better: trust. The kind of trust you earn by simply choosing decency when no one's watching. By the following week, change was no longer optional at Gleaming Motors. Corporate rolled out sweeping reforms. Every regional branch, every location, received new policy manuals, and more importantly, mandatory training. Equity and ethics. No longer a box to check on a hiring form, but a living part of the culture. Every sales associate was now required to undergo sensitivity workshops. Customer interaction ratings would be tracked and reviewed quarterly. Secret shoppers were deployed. Anonymous customer feedback surveys were launched online and in-store. But the biggest change was physical. One day each month, the showroom would open early, Veterans and First-Time Buyers Morning. No upselling, no judgment, just respect. Staff were instructed to treat every visitor like they were buying their fifth car, not their first. Every person walking through the door was to be seen, heard, and respected. A new placard was installed behind the main reception desk. It read, "The way we treat people who don't look like buyers, tells the world what we really sell." Travis would have scoffed at it. But he wasn't around to laugh anymore. The transformation at Gleaming Motors didn't happen overnight. But it was real, and unmistakable. What used to be a fortress of chrome, glass, and quiet arrogance was slowly becoming something else: accessible, human, aware. For the first time, employees noticed each other. Conversations weren't just about commission numbers or inventory. They were about tone, presence, respect. Mistakes weren't swept under plush office rugs anymore, they were addressed, learned from, and in some cases, led to exit interviews. Mitch felt it most. The shift in the air. He no longer stood at the showroom's entrance as a silent gatekeeper, but as a quiet guardian of integrity. He'd never seen himself as someone who could change culture. But as he stepped into his new role as operations coordinator, he realized change didn't need a title. It needed a decision. A moment. A line you refused to cross. Still, the story of what happened rippled far beyond their dealership. 2 weeks after Harlan's visit, an auto industry podcast ran a special feature titled, "The Day Gleaming Motors Got Shined by Its Own Reflection." The episode exploded online, especially in circles focused on racial equity, corporate reform, and business leadership. People began commenting on review sites. Former customers shared stories, some affirming the recent change, others recounting moments that now seemed all too familiar. But there was one thing they all agreed on: something had shifted. And far across the city, in a quiet corner office with mahogany walls and real books lining the shelves, Harlan Whitmore read every review. He didn't need to call anyone. He didn't need to make a public statement. Because the evidence was in the actions. He didn't want heads to roll, he wanted the system to change. Vengeance was easy. Reform took vision. One late afternoon, Harlan sat beside a window with a legal pad on his lap, sketching ideas. New initiatives. Scholarships for automotive engineering students. Business mentorship programs for youth re-entering society after prison. Equity ownership programs for low-income staff who had never even dreamed of being shareholders. His wife walked in, holding 2 cups of tea. "You still thinking about them?" she asked gently. "Not them," he said, without looking up. "What comes next?" She nodded, understanding him like only someone who's lived through it could. "You did more than they deserved." "I did what the next generation deserves," Harlan said. And that young guard, Mitch, he proved something important. Not everyone in the room has to be part of the problem. One person not laughing, sometimes that's enough to plant a seed. He didn't know that, at that very moment, Mitch was at the showroom walking beside a new customer. A young black woman in her 20s. Plain hoodie. Faded sneakers. A spiral notebook tucked under one arm. She moved with uncertainty, like someone who'd been dismissed one too many times. Mitch greeted her with a smile. Not one of those salesman smiles, but something quieter. Respectful. "Welcome to Gleaming Motors," he said. "How can I help you today?" She blinked in surprise, as if she hadn't expected anyone to even speak to her. I was just looking," she said. "I'm not ready to buy or anything. I'm working 2 jobs and saving up. I just wanted to see them." Mitch nodded. "Then you're in the right place. You don't mind?" "Not at all. Everyone's story starts somewhere." And with that, he walked beside her, answering every question about electric models, mileage, lease versus purchase, all without ever asking about her budget or treating her like a burden. From across the street, unseen and unannounced, Harlan stood beneath the shade of a tall lamppost. Watching. He didn't need to go inside. The proof was already there. Mitch hadn't noticed the man watching from across the street. He was too focused on something else, something that seemed small on the surface but felt different now. The young woman in the gray hoodie stood beside a charcoal gray sedan, eyes wide as he opened the driver's side door for her to sit inside. No pressure. No upsell. Just space. Respect. "This is nice," she said softly, running her fingers over the stitched leather. "I've never sat in a car like this before." Mitch smiled. "Take your time." He didn't interrupt. Didn't hover. He knew how fragile moments like this could be, how quickly they could be shattered by a condescending question or a dismissive look. He'd seen it too many times. He had been a part of it by staying silent too long. But not anymore. That interaction would never be written about in headlines. It would never go viral or earn awards. But it mattered. And outside, across the street, Harlan knew it. He watched for a few more moments before turning down the block. The wind caught the hem of his coat, and he tucked his hands deeper into his pockets as he disappeared into the crowd. The world didn't stop. No cameras followed him. But change doesn't always need a microphone. Back at corporate headquarters, the boardroom had become a very different place since Harlan's visit. The Whitmore Kingston audit had exposed more than just the one incident. It had forced a mirror in front of the entire organization. Complaint logs were reviewed, some of which had conveniently gone missing but were recovered through backup systems. More than one regional manager found themselves under scrutiny, and in 2 additional cases, quietly exited the company. Gleaming Motors didn't issue a public apology. They did something better. They changed. They built a diversity and inclusion council from employees at all levels, not just executives with polished resumes but frontline workers, service techs, customer liaisons. Real voices. They launched internal listening sessions. Anonymous feedback forms were made public in monthly reports. Pay structures were reviewed to ensure no disparities existed based on race or gender. And more than anything, they stopped treating luxury like a gate. Because Harlan had made it clear, the real luxury was being treated with humanity. Meanwhile, Mitch's life had shifted more than he ever expected. He had never craved management. Never planned to rise through the ranks. But the promotion to operations coordinator came with new weight. And with it, came a letter. A handwritten note slipped under his office door one morning. "Mitch. You didn't know who I was. That's what made your response honest. Thank you for your decency. H.W." That was all it said. No grand speech. No invitation to dinner. Just 9 simple words that stayed with him longer than any corporate policy ever could. And he earned them. Later that week, as the showroom closed for the evening, Mitch stood by the massive front window and watched the lights of passing cars blur into the night. He thought about how easy it would have been, how normal it once felt, to ignore someone like Harlan. To go along. To laugh. To assume. But now. Now, He felt the weight of every decision like a compass in his chest. Quiet, steady, and always pointing towards something better. He turned off the showroom lights and locked the doors behind him. No applause followed him out. No promotions. No viral tweets. Just the click of a door locking behind a man who had chosen, that day, not to be part of the problem. 1 month after Harlan Whitmore walked out of Gleaming Motors without revealing who he was, a quiet revolution had taken root, less like an explosion, more like a tide. Slow, powerful, irreversible. The McLaren he had once stood beside, once a symbol of exclusion, was now kept on display not just for its beauty, but because of what it had come to represent. Staff no longer whispered jokes about who looked like a buyer. New team members, many from historically underrepresented communities, were now being recruited into sales roles, customer service, and management training programs. But while the building changed, the most dramatic shift occurred in hearts. A young Latino mechanic named Luis, who had been silent during Harlan's dismissal, sat down one afternoon across from Mitch during lunch. "I didn't say anything that day," Luis confessed. "I saw what happened, and I just froze." Mitch nodded slowly. "Me too, in a way. I didn't stop it. I just didn't join in." Luis tapped the edge of his soda can. "I guess. I thought, if I said something, I'd get in trouble. Or they'd laugh at me too." Mitch looked him in the eye. "You're saying something now." That was the quiet power Harlan had unlocked. Not through shouting, not through lawsuits or vengeance. But by forcing people to confront the truth of their own silence. Elsewhere in the city, Harlan had moved on to his next projects, sponsoring a new entrepreneurship incubator for formerly incarcerated black men, expanding his foundation's literacy initiative, and funding a vocational program teaching auto repair to underprivileged teens. But Gleaming Motors never left his thoughts. He followed their internal memos. Reviewed footage sent by regional managers. And once, anonymously, he sent flowers to the receptionist who had once looked away, now newly rehired under the revamped program. The card read only. "Every eye turned away is a chance missed. Every eye opened is a future changed." That receptionist, Rachel, cried when she read it. Meanwhile, Travis Caldwell, once untouchable, was scrambling to rebuild his career. But in the era of social media, industry watchdog blogs, and investor leaks, his name had become a quiet warning in HR departments across the region. He found a position at a smaller dealership chain, far outside the city. Less prestige. Less money. Less power. And in every staff meeting, he found himself hesitating, wondering whether the new intern was a shareholder's relative, or whether the man with scuffed shoes walking through the door might be someone bigger than he seemed. He never forgot Harlan's face. Not because of fear. But because of the look in Harlan's eyes when the footage played, not fury, but clarity. That moment didn't just end Travis's tenure, it exposed the hollowness of what he'd built. Back at Gleaming Motors, the showroom was hosting its second Community Open Day, and the mood was entirely different. Families walked through the glass doors without hesitation. Young couples snapped pictures beside cars they couldn't yet afford but finally felt welcome to admire. Kids were invited to sit in luxury SUVs, not rushed out the door. Mitch stood quietly by the front reception, clipboard in hand, when a little boy tugged on his pant leg. "Excuse me, sir," the child said, eyes wide. "Do you drive all these cars?" Mitch chuckled. "No, buddy. I just make sure everyone gets a fair look." The boy beamed. His father, a tall black man in work boots and a worn bomber jacket, smiled softly. "No one's ever said that to us in a place like this," he said. "Well," Mitch replied, "maybe it's time that changed." The father nodded, understanding the depth of that simple sentence. Outside, the sun dipped low over the glass showroom, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. And across the street, leaning on the same lamppost as before, Harlan Whitmore watched once more, not to oversee, but to witness. This time, he didn't walk away immediately. He stayed just long enough to see the boy run back to his father, laughing, pointing at a sparkling red sports car like it was made of magic. The same kind of magic Harlan himself once imagined, before he learned that wealth without dignity was just metal and noise. Then, with a content breath, he turned. Not to disappear, but to move forward. 3 months had passed since the incident that rewrote the future of Gleaming Motors. By now, most of the staff knew the story, not through rumor, but through official onboarding sessions. It was part of the new training, something HR referred to as, the day the shareholder walked in. But among themselves, the staff simply called it the day everything changed. For Mitch, life had settled into a meaningful rhythm. As operations coordinator, his days were full, inventory checks, staff mentoring, follow-ups with customers, and fielding calls from corporate. But there was something deeper too. Something that didn't come with a title, purpose. He now understood that every small interaction could echo further than he could see. And one day, it echoed in a way he never expected. A sleek, matte black BMW pulled up out front. A young man stepped out, early 20s, sharp fade, pressed slacks, bright eyes. He walked into the showroom confidently, carrying a folder under one arm. When he approached Mitch at the desk, he smiled. "You probably don't remember me," the man said. "But you helped my mom last month. She came in here with nothing but a notebook full of savings plans. You treated her like she was about to buy a Rolls." Mitch blinked, and then it clicked. The woman in the hoodie. "I remember," Mitch said. "Well," the young man continued, "she did buy a car. Not from here, yet, but from a used lot that treated her right. And she told me to tell you, that you were the first person who made her feel like she deserved it." Mitch nodded, his throat tight. The young man handed him the folder. "I'm applying for your intern program," he said. "I want to be part of what this place is now. Not what it used to be." Mitch took the folder and smiled. "You already are." That same week, in a penthouse overlooking the city skyline, Harlan Whitmore stood at his balcony, watching the orange glow of dusk melt into violet. His assistant brought him a tablet, more updates from his foundation, including a picture. Mitch and the new intern, standing side by side on the showroom floor, each holding a small plaque. The caption read, "Real change starts with small choices." Harlan studied the image in silence. There had been no headlines. No viral clips. No grand interviews. But this was louder than all of that. He looked over at a bookshelf lined with dusty business awards, industry recognitions, even a few honorary degrees. And then, he picked up a framed photo. It was faded, old. His mother, standing proudly beside a beat-up station wagon in a parking lot, holding a little boy's hand. She had been ignored by salespeople that day. Treated like dirt. But she walked tall anyway. That boy had grown up to buy his first car cash. Then a dealership. Then shares. Then silence. And then, one day, he broke it. He whispered to the photo, "We made it." Sometimes, it only takes one moment, one act of disrespect, to expose the cracks in a system. And sometimes, it takes one act of quiet integrity to begin rebuilding it. As Harlan Whitmore proved, true power doesn't shout. It walks in, takes note, and transforms everything without ever raising its voice. As we end today's story, remember this. People will forget what you said. They'll forget what you wore. But they will never forget how you made them feel. What would you have done in that showroom? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, subscribe to True Echo for more powerful narratives that reveal the heart behind the headlines. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss the next moment of truth.